Thanks, Jody. Sounds like we're good to go, and so we want to call this meeting to order. Jody Turner is with our Adams 12 IT team, and she's got us all set up to live stream to YouTube. So that's the reason for our first and last name identification on our, and if you are speaking, you need to show your image. And probably it's just good for all of us to keep our images up, since reading body language is such an important part of our communication process. So I'm just going to say welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Dave Mussetter to give us some how-tos on Zoom.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am going to apologize ahead of time for looking like an air traffic controller. Jim's heard this spiel before, but I have dogs that I'm in the basement of my house, and I have dogs that walk up above us, and we've got a wood floor. And so the clicking causes the old man not to be able to hear very well. So my wife bought me this fancy headset to facilitate IBS with. So this, like Dave Lockley, this is not my first Zoom of the last month. This is, I can't count how many times I've been on, but there's some basic things that I want to explain to you before we get started with the check-in. The most important thing is if you're not talking, please keep yourself muted. Zoom has a tendency to echo if somebody has their phone on and their Zoom on at the same time, and they leave their mic open, and sometimes it's very hard to hear. So keep yourself muted unless you're talking. If you want to talk, you can go to the participant screen, and click on that, and it'll give you all the names of the people down the right side of your computer. Right at the bottom, it says raise hand. I'm going to click mine so you can see it. You'll see a little blue hand come up, at least I think it's blue, hand come up. And the nice thing about Zoom is it will put it in the order that you click on. And so I can follow that right down the line. So we do that instead of doing the cards. And then once you're done talking, make sure you click on lower hand, and it takes it away. All right. Now, one caveat that I've noticed with Zoom is that if you are the host or the co-host, a lot of times you don't have the hand at the bottom. So I will do my best to keep everybody on the screen, and if you click on it or you can't find it down at the bottom, just raise your hand, and I will see you, and then we'll call on you as we're walking down through that. All right. The other thing is there is a chat on here. I see there's one chat already. Jody Turner has. We're good to go in the chat. Use the chat sparingly if you can. We have people that don't realize that when you put a chat on for everybody can see that chat. And so be careful how you use the chat if you decide to. I don't monitor the chat. So if there's something in the chat that we need to look at, please draw it to our attention. We've had some people whose mic doesn't work or whatever in that line, and so during checkout and check-in, they'll do the chat in the chat room, or do their feelings, or do what they're talking about in the chat. But I don't like using it for big groups like this because it gets really cumbersome as we're walking down through. Also, Jim and I will monitor you as much as we can, but we miss things just like we miss the cards sometimes being put up. So don't hesitate if somebody's got their hand up and I don't see it or Jim doesn't see it, to click unmute and say, hey, Colleen's got her hand up or whatever in that line, and we'll go to it. I appreciate any help you can give us with that. So anything that I miss Dave Lockley or Jody that I need to talk about?
No, I think you hit all of the major functions. I'm going to give my standard message about grace right now. I think everybody just needs to give everyone a little bit of grace as we walk through this process. It's new for a lot of us. and we're doing things in ways that we never thought we'd be doing it. So I'm sure there's going to be mistakes, and I'm sure it's not going to be smooth, but if we all work together, I think we're going to be able to have a productive, important time.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. One other thing, when we get into the meat of the actual IBS process, which we probably won't in this this particular Zoom meeting, one of the other things that Jim and I'll do, because we don't have chart paper that everybody can see behind us, is we'll pull up a Word document and we will share the screen, and then whatever issue we're working on, we'll title it just like we do on the chart paper, and we'll put story, interests, and options, and we will type them. You'll see it as we're walking through it. You'll see us typing in what you're saying as we move along. And then once we're done with the story, we will email it to all the participants. When we're done with interest, we'll email it to all the participants, et cetera, so that you also have it in your email and you can read through it and so on and so forth. The other thing that we'll probably ask you to do is, if you need to caucus, or if you need to, or when we go into straw designs, we do have breakout rooms we can put you in, and we'll select those and put you in those rooms. At that time, Jody or somebody will probably have to turn over the host to Jim or I, because we can't do it unless we're the host. All right. Any questions? Raise your hand if you have questions. All right, seeing none, we'll start into what we're doing. We do a little bit of an abridged check-in with this. We do who are you, position in district, how are you doing? We'd like to know that. Issues or elephants, and expectations for the day. We won't do a question at this time, since it's an abridged meeting anyway, but we'll start, and I'm going to start with Mila.
Good morning. I'm Mila Shepard. I'm the Chief of Human Resources. It's a pleasure to see you all, and I'm doing well this morning. And Dave, remind me again what the other check-in. I need the chart paper.
Yeah, exactly. Issues or elephants, expectations.
No issues or elephants. My expectations are to make some lemonade out of these lemons we've been handed. So we'll get a little bit of work done today, and hopefully set a comfort level so that in subsequent meetings that Dave, Jim, and I have scheduled, we will be able to get some work done in the next meetings in a pretty efficient manner. Heather Espinosa is the happy 50th, and she's trying to be logged back on again, I think through Jody right now. So she should be joining us, and I think she's the only one missing. So I'll hand it off. Do you want to assign Dave, or do you want me to hand it?
I've got everybody on the screen. I'm just going to go in the order that my screen's in, if you don't mind, Mila, and then we'll go from there, okay? Colleen.
Hi, I'm Colleen Gardner. I'm from Shadow Ridge. I teach 6th grade math. I'm doing okay this morning, better than other mornings. I have no issues or elephants, and my expectations is to see how this goes and go with the flow.
Heather Gracious. I don't know how to say it.
It's Gracious.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm doing well. I am just trying to get used to this whole new way of living our life, but I have no issues or elephants. I'm happy to be here.
Sandy. Unmute yourself, Sandy.
Yeah, I've never been in a Zoom meeting before. Hello. Oh, okay.
There you go.
Sorry. Sandy, Northstone High School science teacher. And I'm doing okay today. It's weird doing this meeting with pets around. I kind of like it though, but I don't have any issues or elephants. I have no idea what to expect. So I'm just kind of going with the flow.
Laura Mitchell.
Good morning, Laura Mitchell, and I'm on the Board of Ed. I feel very good today. I had several Zoom meetings, so I'm getting pretty used to this. I like seeing all the faces. This is probably the biggest one I've been in. So I'm interested to see how we can make this work with all of us on here. I'm just excited to see everyone and know that everyone's healthy and ready to try to get back to work. And my expectations are just to guess we're going to sort of realign ourselves and get caught up and figure out how we're going to move forward and still make progress in these interesting times.
The other Laura.
Good morning. I'm Laura Leppi. I teach math at Holstrom. I am exhausted. I used to think of 8 a.m. as my sleep in, and now it's so early. And I wish my screen were a little darker like Teresa's or Mr. Godowski's right now. But I'm getting used to all this. The new normal is, Zoom meetings. So I'm looking forward to, and there's a dog. And so like my ADHD, like poster child. But I think that this is going to be great. And I think that because we're all such fabulous humans, I think that we're going to adjust and adapt and get the stuff done that we need to in a different world. And it's going to be super. And also the Alt A for unmute and mute is a super fun little trick.
Kathy.
Morning, everyone. Kathy Plomer, Board of Education. I don't know how I'm doing today. It's been one of those weeks where I think everyone's really getting tired of being in the house together. And interesting interactions for me with some of my family members on opening up the country or not opening up the country. And so things are a little bit weighing on me, and this group is going to be dealing with some really heavy issues, and I'm excited that we get to meet in this format. And I'm so glad we have all of our history together so that we can jump to this format and know each other and trust each other. So I'm just, my expectations is that we're going to make this work, and it's going to be fine. But, it's just a little scary place out there. So that's how I'm feeling today.
Good. Teresa.
Good morning, everyone. Teresa Barajas, Assistant Principal at North Glen Middle School. I'm feeling good today. Just kind of like Kathy a little bit. Feeling a little anxiety over next steps and where we go from here. And just, I know I have a teenage daughter and she's ready to get out and about, and she doesn't really understand, she understands the dynamics, but more importantly for her, she's a junior at North Glen High School. So she's wanting to get out and see all her friends. And so I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like if we do open up, and keeping her safe. So a little anxiety around that. No issues or elephants, just really excited to be here this morning with everybody.
Deborah.
Sorry about that. Good morning. I'm Deborah Blake, special education teacher at Arapahoe Ridge Elementary School. I am doing well. Like Teresa, I live with a little bit of anxiety on a constant basis. I have two family members who are emergency medical people. My brother is a doctor and my daughter is an ICU nurse. We actually did just find out yesterday that she tested negative for it. So that did bring our anxiety back down a little bit, but still live with it because she's still going into work. And so does my brother, who's a doctor. So, but other than that, I personally am fine. or as fine as I can be in this new learning environment, teaching environment. I don't do well with it. But I have no issues or elephants at the moment, other than the teaching positions that we're all in. And my expectations is that we are going to learn this new format and still be able to get work done. I think we're a team that's adaptable, and I look forward to continuing our good work.
Linda.
Good morning. I'm Linda Walther. I'm a retired counselor and teacher. I'm doing well today. I have no issues or elephants, and my expectations are to teach an old dog new tricks.
Michelle.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
I'm using headphones because I'm actually at the hospital. I wanted to explain first off that I will probably have to leave in a bit. I'm the primary caregiver for my cousin right now, who's dealing with stage 4 cancer, and we're at the hospital this morning. So she's with a doctor right now, but I probably will not be able to stay on the call the whole time. And I'm Michelle D. Rock, and I teach 3rd grade at Meridian, and I have no issues or elephants, and my expectations are to move forward in our new remote format.
Best wishes to your cousin, Michelle.
Thank you.
Darren.
Good morning, everyone. Darren Oliver, principal at Silver Creek Elementary. But lately, I feel like the custodian of Oliver homeschooling. Feels like all we're doing is cleaning up around kiddos here at the Oliver household. No issues or elephants. The expectation is the same as everyone else, to see how this works in this format with this number of people and everybody playing in the sandbox together and being nice and learning from each other.
Matt. Matt's having trouble unmuting himself.
All right, there we go. Sorry, I've been on all these meetings all the time. I actually kind of know what I'm doing, except I had to switch to my iPad because my laptop is super old and it's not doing well on these. Hey, if I would have known I was going to be working from home, I would have gotten a new one. But morning, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm the principal at Pathways. I'm doing okay this morning. Jumping in another Zoom meeting. It's the way of the world these days, so getting used to it. Yeah, doing okay. My expectations are that we kind of try to figure out how this works in this whole weird, non-personal way. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but it's all good. We'll figure it out. As we said the other day with somebody else, it's like somehow things are still working, even though it seems like they shouldn't. So yeah, we'll be good. I'm doing well.
Dave Lockley.
I'm Dave Lockley, president of DTA. I'm doing well this morning. Just as an update, apparently if you get banned from a meeting, then it doesn't let you back in. So Jody's working with Heather to get her back in the meeting. If that's the biggest issue we have, I think we're doing okay in the long run. I'm doing well. It's just as crazy as everybody else. Every time I have a sniffle, I'm like, is that an allergy or am I sick? So I'm hoping to keep my paranoia minimized for the most part. So, but otherwise I'm doing well. My expectation, just similar to everyone else, is just kind of reconnect, kind of get the ball moving again, so that we can get to the good work for all of our folks.
Chris.
So I'm Chris, superintendent. Doing okay today. I think from March 1st forward, it's been 60 to 70 hours each week. So by the time I get to Friday each week, I am just a little bit worn out, and the adrenaline that was first there is not there in the same degree any longer. So a little bit tired today. Glad it's Friday. No issues or elephants for me. And like others, I look forward to developing some comfort around this format and this tool so that we can do good work, important work together in these challenging times.
Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Alter. I'm a social studies teacher at Horizon High School. I am doing pretty good. Like a lot of other people, I definitely am an anxious person, and not being able to go about my normal routine still sometimes gets to me. And then like students, it's really hard for me to not be right there with them, to be able to talk to them and help them. Helping them via Zoom or Remind has got its challenges. So I think I'm a very much like this. And I think today, I think I'm on the upswing, maybe because it's Friday, but yeah, I'm doing all right. No issues or elephants, and expectations. I also know, I don't know what to expect. I guess I expect that I will keep an open mind and see how this goes.
Nancy.
Good morning, Nancy Leonard, retired principal. I'm doing fine, getting used to staying home with my husband. He's going to be retiring soon, so he's getting used to what that's going to be like a little bit. I don't have any issues or elephants. I expect we will figure this out and be able to do good work together. This is about my 15th Zoom meeting with a variety of groups that I'm part of. So it does work. I can tell you that. It's not quite the same as being there, but it does work. And Michelle, will you give your cousin my best, please?
Bo.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be connected, albeit virtually, this morning with all of you. I'm doing okay. Chris's sentiments around the adrenaline of those first few weeks of adjustment waning and a longer road stretching out ahead resonate with me. But I also agree with the sentiment in the room that we'll make this work. This is a high capacity team and we'll adjust to this. No issues, no elephants, and just looking forward to charting our course from our comfort of our own homes moving forward. Thanks.
Marty.
Morning. It's nice to see everybody. Marty McCarthy, Principal STEM Launch. I don't know how I'm doing. Like, this is a mess. I really miss my old job. Chris, I like my old job back sometime. And like Dave, I've probably taken my temperature 1,000 times in the past week. But other than that, everybody in the family is doing well, so I'm grateful for that. So I don't have any elephants or issues. I have full faith that we'll figure this out. I've been in a lot of these meetings over the past month, and I'm always surprised how much better they are than I thought they were going to be. So good to see everybody.
Dorman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dorman Land. I'm a teacher at Century Middle School. I'm really well, I guess. I'm struggling with the asynchronous. My students, I have a handful of them that are just thought that means that they can do everything, and they keep on working and working and working. So they've totally blown through all my year's plans, and I'm having to start some on 8th grade. They're 7th graders, and they just decided they love Spanish. So that's a struggle, but a wonderful struggle. No issues are elephants, and what else? I think that's all I'm supposed to say, right?
Expectations.
I expect everything to go well. Zoom works really well. We'll do fine. We'll get done what we need to do. So I guess that's high expectations.
Jim.
Well, good morning, everyone. Several of you have spoken about adrenaline, and it looks to me that your faces don't show the horrendous effects of adrenaline as they might have 10 days ago. So congratulations. Most of the faces are pretty relaxed and able to focus. So I'm looking forward to today. I'm one of your facilitators. My expectations are that we'll figure this out. We'll move forward, and more and more things will become routinized as we go through the process, and we'll make it work.
Did I get everybody but myself? Is there anybody that I didn't get? All right, I'm Dave Mussetter. I'm one of your facilitators. I'm doing well. I'm struggling a little bit with a senior in high school that is very disappointed that his graduation has been moved, and that his hockey season has been canceled, and that his prom has been canceled. So it's a different world with a 2020 graduate, and he's finishing up with his distance learning, and really is struggling with that right now. So he and I sit darn near every night and talk, and that part of it's been nice, but he is really having problems with it. Other than that, I'm doing fine, and I have no issues or elephants. And my expectations are, like Dave said early, that we give each other a little grace. Sometimes it's hard to find the key that unlocks your microphone. Sometimes I will miss people's hands because I'm ingrained in the other things that we're doing. And so I think that's one of our new norms, is have grace with people. Remember also that your norms hold true for what we're doing here, just as they do when we are in person. You know, the biggest norm that we have on this is assume good intent as we're walking through, and you guys have done that so well. And this is a good team. I agree with everybody that said this will work fine, and it does. It's a little cumbersome at times, but overall, it's a great way to get this done when we can't meet face to face. So we made it, Mila, by 8:29. I kind of like that. We're 1 minute ahead of time. So overview of negotiations, I believe, is the next thing on the agenda, correct? And who do I yield to for that?
I think that's Mila and I to talk it. It's funny when people point to me on the screen, but my screen, I'm in a different spot. And so they're pointing.
So who did I point to?
So Jim Lohan is going to explain what we're going to be doing today.
All right.
As you know, all of you know, the world got kind of turned upside down. And Chris is going to speak a little bit about where we are as a system and as you know, an organization, just to give us a little bit of grounding and centering. But as far as negotiations go, Mila and I have been working to determine what are the key essential items that we have to work on as an organization, whether it's because it's pertinent for next year and we can't operate without it, or it's obligations of the contract, things that have to be done. And so what we did and are going to continue to do as we work through this process is kind of limit our topics to those things that have to be discussed. I know Chris is going to talk a little bit about the funding situation and things from the state. And so I'll just preface his conversation by just saying, because of what he's going to talk us through, the compensation part is going to lag behind the rest of it. And we're going to have to be creative on how we can have those kind of conversations in the time and space that the legislator and the universe right now is going to give us. But I do believe we've got, Mila and I have kind of come up with a few topics, and I jotted down some notes, but please keep in mind that just because we don't know how long issues are going to take in this environment and how, how this is all going to work and what is the next shoe that's going to fall on us, that these things are in flux. And so in our first couple of meetings, we're going to prioritize items that, like I said, are required to do each year. For example, that's why today we're discussing the sick leave bank. It's in the master agreement required that we review sick leave bank every single year. So here we are reviewing sick leave bank this year. So we're going to walk through some of our conversations. They're still going to be discussing issues around the years of service credits, We're still going to be trying to discuss what to do about our CTE folks. We're still going to be bringing up the specials MOA and the rest of our MOAs, the specials allocation MOA specifically as an item that we kind of need to discuss and have some work to do to show you. We have a few reports from some groups that may inform our work this year or may launch us into next year's work from, like I said, Comp Committee and others. And then the big one that we're going to be tackling near the end is the planning time, elementary planning time issue that has been kind of circulating and working throughout this entire year. I feel like we're getting really close to a place where we're going to be able to make some large movements. And so if you could give us all grace, I know we're not on the time that we wanted for that at the moment, but I feel like if we give it another week or two and then bring it up in our meetings at the end of April and May, I think we're going to be able to do some good work in that space. Mila, is there any kind of topics or comments you would want to make on how we're moving forward?
I hope that you all got invitations. I think you'll see the structure of our meetings puts us into like 2-hour calls for the most part. Added a few meetings in there, and then added a couple of days later in May 11th and May 14th. And hopefully we won't need those. I always try to have it as needed and cancel it. We haven't gotten to that yet. Maybe we will this year. Put an 8 to 11 a.m., a 3-hour meeting on those days, just because sometimes near the end we're accelerating and we just need a little more time. And so if we block 3 hours and use it, great. If we don't need all of it, we will drop it. So hopefully you got all of those invitations on your calendars, and you're good to go. We'll have this meeting today, and then we'll do one on the 24th, one on the 27th, one on the 29th. So sort of rapid succession there toward the end of April, and then the May 4th, May 11th, and May 14th dates. So we'll spread our topics across those dates. We'll see how we're able to go, judge our time a little bit, and get things calendared as we think they can fit. Certainly welcome any questions that anybody has about structure or topic.
Questions for Mila or Dave? I don't see any at this time. So are we ready to go to Chris, Mila? Is that the next thing on there? All right, Chris.
So good morning, everybody. In terms of what I have to share about budget, quite a bit of it you may have seen in Chalkbeat or other sources, but in case you haven't, I'll just lay out what I'm reading and what I'm hearing from a variety of sources. So the starting place is that the Joint Budget Committee and the legislature as a whole is not likely to develop proposals around school finance and the broader state budget until the commencement of that, most likely in mid-May, and not really culminating until the end of May. So it's roughly 30 days behind what we see in most years. Typically right around now, School Finance Act is largely hashed out. It's on the table. If it's not formally introduced, our lobbyists and everyone else behind the scenes know what it's going to look like, and it's usually then fairly quickly moved through the legislature from there. So we're about 30 days behind. Some of what I've seen and heard from several sources is that
I think Chris just froze on us.
Yep, but Heather has joined the call, so maybe in the in-between spot, we can have Heather introduce herself, check in. Hey, Chris.
Yep.
You cut out there for a little bit. If it's okay, maybe have you restart, but Heather did just join us, and so have her check in real quick, and then have you recollect your thoughts, because you cut out right about the time you were talking about not having the budget probably until the end of May, which is about a month behind. That's kind of where the last thing I heard you kind of saying. Apologize about that.
Sounds
Heather?
good.
Okay, Heather, would you check in? Who are you? How are you? Position in the district, issues, elephants, expectations.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm not happy 50 anymore. And apparently technology is really smart because despite all our efforts, my computer still won't let me in. So I'm on my iPad. I'm okay now. My children are excited that I gave them a 2-hour delay to start school today because internet up in the boonies doesn't work so well with lots of us on it. So they're excited for that. I'm a teacher at Wood Glen. And was that everything, Jim?
Issues, elephants, and expectations.
No issues or elephants, and great expectations as always.
All right, thank you. Back to you, Chris.
All right, thank you, Dave. I may turn off my video to see if that helps, just because I've got crummy internet here going today. So we'll see if this helps. Can somebody just let me know if you can hear me okay? Mila, can you hear me? Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chris.
I hear you.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the state budget, beyond timing, the state budget typically is around $31 billion. And state budget officials are projecting currently about a $3 billion shortfall in revenue collections, which is about a 10% reduction compared to typical collections. And so based on that, CFOs throughout the metro region have modeled out in many districts a variety of scenarios. The best case scenario would be flat funding, which is not the best case scenario we've been discussing in some prior updates with this group. So the past updates that Susie and I have given you assume that we'd have a $52 million reduction in the BS factor and increase in funding of 1.9% for inflation. And so in a flat funding model, those two things go away. The $52 million buy down goes away, and the 1.9% BS factor, I'm sorry, the 1.9% inflation adjustment goes away. So you largely have exactly the same funding per pupil year over year. That scenario puts us, when you have modeled in step increases and step equivalents for other employee groups and some of the must-do ads that we've talked about historically, it puts us about $4.8 million underwater in a deficit position. The one happy thing that's cut for us as a positive since I think the last time we met is we've got health insurance projections back for premiums for next year, and we see 0% increase around health insurance cost. And actually we're able to add some additional benefits for individuals working through infertility issues. So that's a plus to the tune of more than $1 million. But flat funding is still a challenging scenario for us. 5% reduction is what I think most people are believing is more of a likely case at this time. And a 5% scenario leaves us about $18 million underwater. And then some are modeling 10%, given what I've just shared with the state budget down $3 billion off of a $31 billion total. Some are modeling 10%. We've not even had Susie do that. I know it's a train wreck if that scenario happens. And I'm going to remain in the hopeful, optimistic place that that's not a scenario that we have to actively work through. One of the big variables that's an unknown in this situation is how federal stimulus money may come in and either affect the BS factor at the state level or how those funds might get flowed through to us. The current estimates is that we would get anywhere from $3.6 to $3.8 million in stimulus dollars if it flowed directly to Adams 12. There's some potential that the amount could be larger. Under that legislation, the state education agencies permitted to hold back up to 10% of the
Chris, we've lost you again.
Chris, you just cut out.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So it's 120 to 125 million dollars, and if CDE kept 10%, that's anywhere from 12 to 12.5 million. If they hold less, then districts in the field would get more. But it's not clear. I think Susie and most CFOs have been assuming that the state will just take the stimulus money, that 120 to 125 million, and add it to the state pot and use it to otherwise reduce down the BS factor.
Sorry, Chris, we lost you again.
Hear me?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Yeah, you're going in and out, Chris.
Okay. Sorry, gang, I am doing my best. I don't know what's going on today. So those are the scenario ranges in terms of macro, and we've not really done much to play around with how we would balance it out other than actively managing the money that we currently have. So for the principals in the room, they'll know that one of the things that we've done is ask them
We've lost you again, Chris. Be patient, everybody.
I'm gonna send Chris the call-in number and see if that he can maybe use that number to help with his audio portion.
Thanks, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just throw something in here while we're waiting? On the drive, the 2019-2020 IBS negotiations documents, I started a document that's just like general notes, like secretary type notes of the meeting.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So if anybody's interested in adding to that or just following along, it's called Chris Budget Info, April 17th, 2020.
Thanks, Sandy.
Appreciate that, Sandy.
That was a big sigh, whoever that was.
Probably a combination of me or Chris. I don't know which one it was.
I think it was Chris.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel his, every time I try to talk on, give a presentation, it seems like that's been doing that to me too lately.
Can you guys hear me this way so far?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
All right, I'll see if this works better. So give me a little bit of a sense of how much of what you could hear of me in the past and any gaps that would be helpful to readdress.
I think we heard you pretty well up until the point you were saying principals in the room about active management of the budget or the money we have on hand. You were saying principals in the room will hear, and that's when it started getting sketchy.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So we asked our principals to give back to the district 80% of what they had left in their operating budgets for the remainder of March, April, May, and June, and to hold on to 20% to use for expenses they'd incur for the rest of this school year, as well as some essential purchases to gear up for the new school year in August. And so that was helpful. Some of what they gave back to us, we've used to deal with staffing needs. As many of you know, we've got the 700 student additional decline in enrollment forecast for next year. And so that often leaves schools short of managing class sizes to thresholds that we need to be lower. There's times that we need additional resources to deal with things like a GT coordinator, a 0.2 GT coordinator at a Coyote Ridge. There's times that you need some additional staffing to fill some gaps like that. And so we've done that work at the building level. We've done similar work at the district level. Most departments are at 80%. There's a few places where that's not feasible, but it's not because someone's playing hide the ball. We've got, for example, in parts of business services, still some utility bills that aren't going to shrink down as much as you might hope with a closure, especially given the cold weather we've been having. And then we've got some pending bus purchases and funds encumbered for that. But as you cobble all those funds together and you start to cobble together all the other one-time sources, including some things like unspent enrollment reserve dollars on hand for next year, and the remaining money, it's about $4.2 million, I believe. Maybe it's 4.5 million of the 5C funds collected last spring for class size relief that we've not used. As you cobble all that together, we've got one-time funding sources of close to $20 million on hand that we can use to plug some one-time holes or some holes that may be ongoing that we're willing to take some collective risk about using funds in that way. We still haven't factored in what we may need to spend to deal with some expenses that could continue into next year or that we'll need to address because of remote learning. We expect, for example, that some of our Chromebooks that were deployed will come back damaged or needing replacement. Others may not come back at all, just given the mobility in our community and the challenging circumstances we face. So we've not yet carved out what kind of funds we might need for that. There's some additional funds that we think are likely if we're going to have remote learning as a fallback or maybe a lead way of delivery moving forward. We've done a pretty good job through lots of private groups like Comcast who've given 2 months free internet to a lot of families. We're largely filling that gap without significant expense now. But if those companies choose not to extend free internet connectivity beyond May, and if we need to have that resource available in the future, then we'll need to budget some significant dollars for that delivery mechanism. What else to say? I guess the final thing to keep in mind as we think about this big picture and about using one-time resources is the implications of Tabor. What I saw 10 years ago, the first time we went down a path of significant financial challenge, is that if we get a 5% or 10% cut, we'll just toss one of those numbers out. The state's ability to give us more money in future years, because state level is where Tabor still applies. At the district level, it doesn't, but at the state level, it does. They'll be constrained to giving more money to K-12 education based upon what the rate of inflation is and how much pupil enrollment growth there is or isn't statewide. And what I fear is that, at least in our last recession, the Great Recession that we faced starting in the 2010-11 school year, inflation was negative for a while. And then it was very small because there were so many people out of work that people who sell goods and services couldn't increase their prices much, if anything at all. If we have a similar dynamic here, we could be in a spot where the economy gets back on its feet and people are spending a lot of money compared to present, and state revenues increase fairly significantly. Say they grow by 5% compared to this $3 billion reduction. But if inflation is 1% or 0.5%, we will not, or the legislature will be constrained in giving us the 5%, even if they want to, because the inflation rate and the pupil growth will be much smaller. And so because of that, our cabinet teams had lots of discussions about being judicious about how we use one-time money to fill gaps for next year, because we could have significant gaps we're working through for the next 2 or 3 years. So high level, that's what I know around budget. There's probably other details that if you have interest in discussing, I can do my best to answer. And Mila or Dave Lockley, we've had some discussions here and there about money issues. If there's things that I've not shared here that you think I may know and are helpful, I'm happy to jump in.
Dave or Mila, do you have anything to add?
Not on money issues, but I before we switch off to our next topic item, if there aren't more questions or topics on money to discuss, I do think it might be helpful for some of the folks here who don't know all the amazing work that's been happening across the system to transition us to distance learning, to just give a high level understanding of how successful our meal program has been and the work learning services and buildings have done to get us kicked off with remote learning, and Lori Bailey's team outreaching to students, and just maybe just a high level piece just so that they can understand kind of some of the big swaths of stuff that's been going on lately.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm happy to jump in on that. And then I may ask Bo to talk more specifically about some of the remote learning work that's gone on. The meal distribution piece that Dave talked about is a big point of pride. That team mobilized within 2 or 3 days time to begin serving meals during the first week of our extended spring break. During that first week, we had about 4,500 meals or children served, and that's grown just steadily each week since. The most recent data that we have is that we're serving 15,000 meals each of the 3 days a week that our team assembles. We give 2 days worth of meals each time, so it's 7,500 children that we're serving. So I've not gone about thinking about an increase, but 4,500 to 7,500 kids is a significant increase. And we expect continued growth in that area, absent pretty dramatic and sudden improvements to the economy, which don't seem likely right now. So that's been a huge lifeline. In addition to that, we know some families have not been able to get to our 5 comprehensive high schools, which are our meal distribution sites. And so Rochelle Garcia Gomez and her team have been doing some home delivery of those same meals, and they're serving about 300 families through that sort of mechanism. So tremendous work in that space. On device deployment, we did a reservation system, and then we had 3 days of a hybrid of come in and get a reserved device if you hadn't earlier submitted a request, or just show up. And we had just tremendous assistance from learning services and staffing that deployment exercise. Logistics are complicated because you had to take down a lot of Chrome cards throughout the district, get devices off, sometimes redistribute them from buildings onto high schools, sometimes quite a lot of logistical work. At this point, we've distributed close to 12,000 devices. We're now doing some mobile delivery to schools and to families. So earlier this week, there was a route that was developed to go to places like Eagle View and Tarver and some schools up in that part of our community to get devices out. So pleased with that. We're assembling constantly information about families who may have needs that they're not getting addressed one way or another. And some of those needs are in the domains I've just described: getting a device, getting food, getting internet connectivity, but often it extends to hygiene items or rent assistance, utility assistance. It can go a wide variety of ways. And within the first 72 hours of trying to get more systematic in assembling who needs that kind of help, we had 265 families we identified who had significant needs. There were a handful of families who had needs in 4 of the 5 key domains that I've described. So we've been able to help in that space. There's a lot of faith community partners, a lot of city and county assistants, a lot of nonprofits who are all jumping in. If we don't have the right resource, a lot of other people do. So that's been tremendous to see happen. On the connectivity side, at this point, we have ballpark about 85 families as of Wednesday that we were working to get connected up to the internet. We still learn day by day of families who don't have that service. And it's often, as you know, that you have kids who aren't checking in for any remote learning, that you do the third or fourth time a follow-up from teacher to family and realize that that's still an issue. And then we get them connected to IT and then to Comcast through the Internet Essentials program. But we chip away at that constantly. And we hope at this point that we have very few families, even with the ones that we don't know about, we're hopeful that it's less than 100 families who don't have internet connectivity at this point in time. We did receive a very generous donation of $100,000 from the Mortgage Family Foundation to support food distribution and needs of families, especially high poverty families in remote learning. And the last number I saw was that donations made to our 5-Star Ed Foundation to support food and device technology needs exceed $10,500. So those have been very much appreciated. And I know many of those donations to the Ed Foundation have come from principals and staff on the system. Very much grateful for that. So those are some highlights in those spaces. I think I'm going to yield to Bo to talk more about some of the work they've done with remote learning.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I just would echo on your update, just how proud I am of our system, and I think how thoughtfully a lot of departments have worked over the last several weeks to make sure, first and foremost, we're taking care of our students and our families. It's been really heartening to see that effort, both within Adams 12 and our community partners. On the remote learning landscape, I think what I feel really good about is our embrace of this asynchronous approach. I think understanding that our families and our educators are juggling a lot of different stressors and demands right now. We know a lot of our teachers are wearing 2 hats as caregivers and now home educators, and still trying to support the education of their own students, and trying to find a way that we can provide really meaningful and thoughtful instruction over these next few weeks, but do so in a way that doesn't unduly demand that someone be live and present every minute of the day. So that flexibility is kind of built in. So as we've done that, we've also heard how important it is for our students and our teachers to have some opportunities to still have some live interaction and FaceTime. So as we've gotten through these first few days, I think getting this balance right of instruction and learning that happens asynchronously, that you can tap into any time, but still some optional opportunities for kids to come together with their teacher and connect in ways that aren't always academically driven, that are more about relationship building, community building, filling that bucket right now that I think is really dry as we adjust to this time of social distancing and being in our own homes. And I know I've really appreciated the opportunities to have meetings like this with my staff and my team. And I know our students and our teachers appreciate that opportunity with students as well. So as we move forward, past this initial phase of just doing a lot of work with teachers around building comfort around just the mechanics of remote learning. You know, we had some teachers in our system that have been using learning management systems for quite some time and had an easier adjustment. We had others that had never dipped a toe in this water before. So we tried in that first week after spring break to provide a lot of opportunities for teachers to interface with different folks in learning services and IT to learn some of the basics of remote learning, provided some different examples of how it might look across different levels. And I think we've now crossed over that initial gap of just getting comfortable. And so now it's thinking about how do we over these next few weeks do everything we can to bring as many of our students as possible to a point of readiness for what's next for them academically. We know there's going to be some challenges. We know we're going to have to do more work than perhaps we've had to do in the past as kids return to a traditional setting, but we want to take advantage of these next several weeks to do all we can to provide instruction and learning opportunities so we prepare as many students for what's next as possible. I think the one other thing I would add is obviously, in addition to grieving all these milestone losses that our seniors are missing right now, we're also trying to do a lot of work on thinking about what we need to do to support our kids who are not quite on track for graduation. We want to get as many of them to that point as possible. We always encounter that, of course, every year, but it's a little more difficult to really think about how we can help them across the finish line remotely. So we're doing a lot of work right now, almost on a case-by-case basis, in thinking through what some of our seniors need to complete in order to be on track for graduation later this spring. So that's a real high-level update of where we're at remote learning. We're going to continue to stay at it, kind of move into this next phase of now that we've got the basics and the essentials, how do we kind of maximize the learning and still, as I said, sustain those connections and that sense of community moving forward.
All right, thanks, Bo, and thanks, Chris. Any questions for Bo or Chris on either of the issues that were just spoken about? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. If you do have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand in the participants part. So I believe we're now on sick leave bank. Dave, Mila?
All right. I'm going to jump in. Mila, feel free to jump in if that whenever as you want to add or bring anything up. For the new members of the team, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some information about sick leave bank and some other stuff. So the sick leave bank program, for those of you who may not be as aware of it, there's some of us as new members of the team this year, is a employee contribution, employer managed sick leave bank program for when you have medical conditions that require you to be out for a significant period of time. Part of that program is where we have to pull together folks each year and take a report on what is the current balance and status of the sick leave bank, and then make any adjustments or recommendations to adjustments to that program to you guys if we see any. One of our primary purposes of this program from an IBS lens is to ensure that it is as fair and as equitable and maintains a consistent balance, a positive balance for the future as we go through this program. And if for whatever reason it was to be depleted, then it would be our obligation to address, we would be obligated to determine a way to repay the bank and to change policies so that it remains in a positive status for the future. Mila, anything you want to add about the sick leave bank before I take questions or talk about the report?
No, you're doing a good job. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Are there any questions about the bank or anyone who wasn't aware of what the bank was? Pull up that participant window. Dave, could you call on anyone who raises their hand? I can't do the raise handing and have my screen being shared at the same time.
Yeah, I've got it on the side over here. So yep, okay. If you have a question, raise your hand in the participants part. I can't see everybody's face right now, so you'll have to do it through the participants page.
Yep. Just let me know if there's a question, Dave. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep walking through.
Will do.
So the sick leave bank, like I said, the program is managed or oversight by a committee of folks that's made up of DTA and HR benefits folk that come through and once a year, and we pick the 30th of January as just an arbitrary year-to-year date to analyze a 12-month look back on the program and to figure out what is the current health of the bank and where it is standing. So if there's not a question on the program itself, I'm gonna move to the health of the bank presentation. So here you have a look back for the last couple of years. And so you can see the in this column here, those are the last, looks like 6 years kind of listed out in the bank. This column here are the number of hours in the bank that are used. This column here is the number of hours that are contributed. And then this column here is the remaining balance left in the bank with the ongoing running total of days in and out for the year. So for the sick leave bank year that started in February of 2019 and ended January 31st of 2020, sorry, January 31st, 2020, there were 18,622 hours used. There was a total of 19,704 hours contributed, with a balance of 1,084 hours, which gives us a running balance, excluding something I'll talk about in just a second, of 3,452 hours, which if you divide it up on 8-hour increments is approximately 431 days that remained in balance in the bank. The last year during negotiations, we negotiated a one-time infusion. It's a pretty creative solution. One-time infusion of basically an extra year's worth of days into the bank, the sick leave bank, which worked out to approximately 19,300 hours, which when you put the two chunks together gives us approximately 19,731.35 days remaining in the bank. I know that says day there. That's just the funkiness of me showing you an Excel spreadsheet on from an email on this format. It's hours, not days, in that box on the actual spreadsheet itself. Apologize for that kind of weird formatting look to it. Questions about the bank itself, or the hours, or the where we're at?
I don't see any questions, Dave.
Sweet. So one of the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mila.
Sorry, Dave. I think that you're adding 431 days, which is a different unit, to 19,300 hours to come up with that 19,731. And so I would just suggest that we go back and add hours to hours. Yeah.
I think those 2 hours put together is, yeah, it needs to be re-added. It's a formatting piece. I apologize for that. That's what I was saying. It didn't, when it moved into computers language, I realized it was a mistake. So if you take the two highlighted components, those are the number of hours remaining in the bank. Apologize for that formatting piece.
Thanks, just to clarify.
Mm-hmm. So last year, it was asked by this body, and has been for the last couple of years, one of the issues, and I'm going to reshare the language here, that has been identified over the years is this section right here, 23.3, which talks about the kind of buy-in of the sick leave bank, if you will. It's the the deductible, the copay, whatever you want to call it. But basically, it is there's a window of days that are contributed into the bank before the bank starts to kick in. So everyone has to contribute the equivalent of 10 days into the bank. But it can take the accumulated leave up to 30 days of one's personally saved up days before the sick leave bank starts to kick in, which this team has identified in the past as an unequitable because someone who's been duteous and stayed come to work every day every week then loses far more than somebody who wasn't, or those that have a planned medical condition, whether it was a surgery or a pregnancy or whatnot, versus somebody who has an accident ends up contributing more. And you guys have asked us repeatedly to figure out if there was a way to do that differently, to be able to calculate the lower that bar. We have made over the last couple of years a series of changes, which I think, based on, as you saw from the running total, is working in a positive direction to kind of bring down the number of hours taken out each year in the bank, not because people aren't getting access, but some of the high flyers of the bank we've been addressing. And so we think we might be moving into a place where that could change. However, based on the numbers of days contributed before the sick leave bank kicked in, if we were to drop that 30 number below 26, I think is what we figured out, that the bank would no longer be in balance for this current year. Also, the number of people who contributed, the above 26 number, was a very small minority. So even dropping it to that number would not impact or help a large number of folks. And so at this time, it was the bank's recommendation that we not change the 30-day cap of days taken. And then there's a second issue that you guys asked us to look into that I'll address after if there are any questions or comments about what I just said or anything Milo wanted to add.
Any questions on what Dave just said? Milo, do you have anything else to add?
Nope.
Okay.
So I'm keep going.
Yep, keep going,
Sorry,
Dave.
With the screens, I'm having trouble seeing if any the body language on folks. So the second issue that was asked to look into is the situation where the vast majority of people, by vast majority I mean basically everybody, who goes into the sick leave bank comes out of the sick leave bank with no days remaining. The most common use of the sick leave bank is not the total number of days drawn, but just the most common reason is for maternity reasons. And so folks come back and from leave without any temporary days left. And this team has identified in the past an issue where they don't have any leave days left. And so folks either don't take time off because they're sick or needed to take care of others, and they end up having to take a full per diem day, or they don't take the day when they should when they could rest for a day, and instead get themselves extra sick and end up taking 5 days instead of the 1 day because they're trying to avoid taking that full per diem loss from their paycheck. So one of the things that we discussed as a sick leave bank, as not a recommendation necessarily, but a potential solution thing to consider for IBS, would be adding language into this article, potentially underneath this 23.3 section, that would allow those that had depleted their temporary days upon returning from the sick leave bank to be able to purchase at the sub rate a certain number of days. We didn't discuss an exact number, but putting a number in there that would allow people to purchase sick leave sub days up to a certain limit that could help soften that blow and encourage people when they're sick to take time, but not make it a freebie. So they're not just taking it because they want to take it, but take it because it's a medical necessity. This is something that when I looked at some other sick leave bank programs in the state of Colorado and other places for teachers is I want to say common, but there are many of them that have a provision that allows them to take days in. We have one of the only banks that have such a large maximum day, that 30-day window. And so I don't know if that's connected, but we have one of the larger windows as far as the buy-in to the sick leave bank. So we're kind of recommending that we as a body discuss if that's something that we would want to entertain as a potential way of addressing the issue of having folks come back from sick leave bank without any days remaining. Mila, anything you'd want to add to our conversation or to that, or I'm doing such a great job. You're just taking other notes.
You're doing a great job, Dave. Remind me, did we talk about this being allowed to buy days at the sub rate when you're out as happening only when you're back from a leave, or really anybody who's exhausted their days, whether they've had an extended leave of absence or whether they've just used their 10 days? Did we put any parameters on that in the recommendation?
Our recommendation was those that were in the sick leave who had gone out on a sick leave bank or a medical leave of absence. Because one, that was the scope of our charge was to look at how to address people coming back from medical leave without having any days left. But I think the tone of our conversation, we remain very focused on just this particular aspect of the people running out of days. So it'd be our recommendation, or at least the thing we're putting forward to consider, would be just the purchasing of days when someone returns from sick leave bank without any leave days remaining.
Thank you, because I thought that was my recollection as well, and not to encourage or subsidize the really extensive use of just days here and there that add up to more than the allotted days in a year.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, questions for Dave or Mila? Kathy.
So I think that sounds like a very reasonable solution for what we've been dealing with. And I think this question goes beyond obviously the scope of work, because COVID wasn't in existence then, but I'm just wondering, either district-wide or sick leave-wide, given that people will probably have the need to quarantine if they're exposed. I mean, we don't know the situation coming forward, but I would imagine there could be different types of sick leave use. And how, just was curious if this is the committee that would take that up, or if that's a more district decision, and just knowing that that could be complex kind of at the start of next year.
Mila, do you want to address how we've discussed COVID-related things under the current environment?
Yes. So, with regard to sick leave bank?
Sick leave bank and the usage of days and the current order that's in place.
Yeah. So you received the communications from me. Most of you did. I guess Linda and Nancy probably did not. But these were to staff about the new federally mandated sick leave called FFCRA, Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And we've got a set of conditions, 6 conditions described by the federal act that require employers to give up to 10 days of paid leave, fully paid sick leave, and then beyond that, up to 12 weeks of leave paid at 2/3 rate when somebody qualifies under one of these conditions. And so we've talked a little bit about how someone who has an extended illness then would be eligible for this federal program, but then if there's a need to take advantage of our sick leave bank, there's still they're still subject to the conditions. Dave, did we talk about the 10 days provided by the federal government being the entry charge to the sick leave bank? Forgive me, I don't know why that just flew out of my head.
Yeah, so we talked about, because of the way the language currently sits, that it has to be their own 10 days.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
That is because of our application of the current guidelines, and that I never get the acronym right, FFRC, whatever it is.
FFCRA, yeah.
Thank you. Specifically calls out that it's not to supersede policies or leave policies or bank policies like ours that are currently in existence. So it's not like some laws that get passed that supersede the contract language. This act specifically calls out that it does not.
So we talked about the fact that if somebody needed an extended leave, and certainly the federal act is there, but 12 weeks at 2/3 pay is not as rich a benefit as our certified contract provides. And so our folks would probably go the route of using their own temp leave time to buy admission into the sick leave bank and then be paid full days pay, 100% pay in the sick leave bank, but that they would have to use their own temp leave and pay that price of admission, so to speak, into the bank. So those two options are out there and available to our people, but that's how they sort of play together.
And I would also call out that the sick leave bank, unlike the thing I can never say correctly, there are elements where for the federal law and even the state regulations that allow you to take these extended leaves of absence for care of others, right? For family members, for loved ones, whatever. Whereas the sick leave bank is only for your own medical condition. So what it doesn't do is, like, let's say, Eddie gets sick. I just knocked on one in case you're wondering. The sick leave bank doesn't cover me caring for him. The federal and state law leave provisions do. Whereas our sick leave, if I got sick, I just knocked on wood again. Now I'm gonna have to go take my temperature, Marty. Protects you at the full pay and benefit level for myself, not care for others.
Right.
Hey, questions for David or Mila? Dave, Mila, I'm not seeing any, so where do we go from here?
Dave, I just gotta say, you do look like a radio guy. I'm just waiting for you to start spinning some tunes here.
Well, it's odd because I can't ever tell how loud I am to you guys because it's coming. My voice is coming through my ears as well, and so it's a little cumbersome, but I'm dealing with it. So
you're fine.
I thought you were going to tell him that he had a face for radio. Definitely had a face for radio.
That's true, Dave.
So, I mean, I guess it,
Kathy asked a question about process. How would we consider that kind of a proposal? You want to talk about that?
The proposal that I just brought up. So, I mean, the place we could be in is similar to how we have other recommendations from other committees that we have committed, where we can choose to either go through the full process or a slightly abbreviated process in this sense, where we allow people to identify some interests, some story, and then throw up options in that space. Because once again, we also didn't recommend a day number. I can tell you in story what I saw looking at other bank policies, but that would be kind of the next step to do, and see how far we get in the next half hour. We could be at a place at the end of this half hour to commission a group to write the physical language that could be inserted into the contract, or pick it up at our next session, depending on where we went. So the one thing, I know we didn't talk about norms about this, and so this is more of a question maybe for Dave. If we were to go that route, would you recommend you call on folks, or people raise hands to add in an interest or a story or an option in this setting for this topic?
Yeah, what we do, first of all, is let Jim or I get set up with a Word document to put it in, and share it on the screen. And then usually what I've done as far as monitoring the group is just going down either the participants on the side or the pictures that I have in front of me, because I can spread those across. I don't have to see Jim typing in the story, interests, and options, so I can spread my screen out to see everybody, and I just go down the line. And the same thing holds true for when we're going around the table. If you don't have any story, or you don't have any interest or options, you just pass, and I go to the next person. That's the way I've monitored in other areas. Dave?
Does Jim have access to typing into Google Docs, Jim? Because if so, I can share you a Google Doc that then I can put up on the screen for people to watch.
I think I'd rather see faces than the screen during this time of sharing story, if you don't mind.
I don't have an issue one way or another.
Okay.
Just a question.
Okay. So Jim, do you have the ability? Excuse me. Do you have the ability to pull up a Word document? Blank one. Unmute yourself, Jim. Jim, I still can't hear you. There you go.
My computer has ability. I'm not sure I do, but I think we can do it.
Okay. So let us, is that where you wanted to go, Dave, Mila? Is that, you want to start story and interest and options?
I think at least working it out in this environment. Mila, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And if anybody had a big objection, speak now, but otherwise let's begin a process.
All right. We have about 20 minutes because we'll want a little time for checkout. So Jim, let me know when you're ready, and I'll start calling on people.
I'm good.
Okay, let's start with, I'm just going to start at the top of my screen, and I have Mila in the top left-hand corner. So story, Mila.
People returning from an extended leave have no temp leave to use for subsequent illness.
And Jim, since I can't see the document, just let me know when you've got it.
Good.
Linda.
Okay, I'm in support of this. I think it's important for people to know they have a fallback position.
Okay.
Good.
Colleen.
I don't know. I've been debating on whether to tell you guys that I went for my COVID test yesterday. My son was presumptive positive for the last 2 weeks. They think I'm at the end of mine. My other son is starting his. So being able to have some days at the end of a leave would be very helpful after all of this is over.
Okay.
Dave, what I got was a leave would be very helpful after all this is over.
Colleen, does that work for you?
Yes.
Deborah?
Pass.
Okay. Marty?
I'm going to pass right now.
Okay. Heather Gracious?
Pass for now.
Darren?
Pass.
Nancy?
Mine's been said, so pass.
Kathy?
I would just say we've worked really hard to get to a positive balance. So finding ways to keep it that way while still being, I guess this is an interest, but I'll just say we worked really hard to get it to a positive and we need to keep it that way.
Thanks, Kathy. Perfect. Thank you.
Got it.
Laura Mitchell?
I think I'll just pass for now.
Matt?
Yeah, I definitely have seen this as a building leader, and it would be nice if employees did have some sort of option to get some temp time back after they come back from leave. So this could be potentially a good way to allow them to do that in a reasonable manner, but not deplete that sick bank balance.
Was that an option or?
A little bit. Jim, could you get story out of that?
Well, it's a lot like the first statement. Would be nice if employee could get some time back. I mean, that's a nice part. That's a story piece, I think.
Yep, I agree. Ready to move on, Jim?
I am.
David?
So the piece outside of my report that I would add was that when looking at banks, that somewhere between 3 and 5 days were the common number of days people were allowed to buy on the other side. I didn't see any with no limit, and most of them ended up being somewhere between 3 and 5 days.
This is when looking at other contracts, right, Dave?
Correct.
Go.
Heather Espinoza.
So having returned myself from leave a few times, this would be a lovely option for folks that doesn't hurt the personal bank account as much as previous per language. So I would agree with everything else that has been said.
Okay.
Bo?
Pass.
Sandy?
In speaking with people, usually mothers to be in situations like this that they're already worried about a million other things. They also, one of their big worries is, oh no, in my maternity leave, which is not technically what it is, but what if I use all the days and then the baby gets sick and I can't stay home? It's a major financial as well as just human worry. So yeah.
Okay, Jim, let us know what you got out of that.
Sandy, what I have is mothers worry about this. Maternity leave extinguishes the leave and does not help when the newborn has health issues.
Yep. Sounds good.
Dorman.
Pass.
Teresa.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is story, so stop me if it is. Still
Okay.
so I think about staff members in our building who had to leave prior to us calling school out because they have a weakened immune system and had to leave early. And so I think about some of those people already having to eat up their days. And so not having to worry about future sick days as they move forward.
Jim, did you freeze on us? Did we lose you, Jim? I think Jim is frozen.
Dave, if you want to keep going until Jim gets back, I can jot down
Okay.
story for him.
Thank you. He's coming back on in a minute. Okay, Chris?
So nothing to add to story. It would be helpful, Dave, Dave Lockley, if either in story or maybe in options, just to clarify more about what this buying at the sub rate means. I know there's lots of different substitute rates. I guess I have in my head this idea that maybe what's being proposed here is you buy days at like $140 a day. I don't know if I'm understanding it correctly or not. So just as we talk more about story or options, it would be helpful to have some greater clarity on the group's recommendation.
Do you want to talk about that, Dave, or do you want us to continue on?
I can just briefly answer. So that's definitely something up for this body to discuss at which rate we chose. The ones that I saw in contract language was they used the term sub-daily rate. Not all systems have the separate rates that we do for, like, a teacher versus a retired teacher versus a long-term sub, that kind of stuff. And so the language that I saw most commonly was either sub rate, just plain sub rate, or sub daily rate was the language. And so I think our recommendation was whatever the standard daily rate for subs is for the system. I can't remember off the top of my head if that's the 140 or whatever that is, but whatever the standard rate is that year would be the purchase price for the day. Does that answer your question, Chris?
It does. It looks like maybe Milo.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that we we'll need to look at that and consider that in the option space, and we'll also need to look at whether the sub-daily rate should include the benefits, the Medicaid and para payments that are required as part of it. And so I think we'll have to talk through, what that amount is and where it comes from so that people understand what they're being charged. And it looked like Marty, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have two things. Marty's got his hand up and Jim is back with us. So I'm gonna start with Marty with a question.
Okay, I did 1 second. I just wrote down for story, Jim, for Chris, because we only really got one through, was basically what I pulled out is there are multiple rates for subs in the system.
Okay. Thank you, David. Marty.
I just want to clarify. So what we're really talking about is if somebody comes back from leave, has no more temp time, and they want to take a day off, they would be able to do that, and get paid for their day minus the sub day. So if your daily rate was $300, you'd have to subtract the 140 or 150 or whatever the sub rate was from that. So it's not a question that you'd be losing some, it's not a free day. You would be being paid less for that day than you would normally be paid.
Dave?
Correct. Yep, correct.
Okay.
It just lowers the cost of not being there.
Okay, I'm at Allison.
I guess I have at Horizon, we have a lot of new moms, and I have sat there with them while they are visibly upset to try to make the decision about whether or not they should have like a family member go pick up their sick kid at daycare, or whether they should take the personal financial hit and just the emotional turmoil that has on a brand new mom who has like a 3-month-old infant, is deciding whether or not they should do what's best for their kid and go take care of them, or whether they should get somebody else to go take care of their kid. And watching new moms go through that is really, really difficult for them, and difficult for everyone around them to watch that.
Okay, Jim, can you get some story out of that? You're muted again, Jim. You're still muted, Jim. Okay.
I'll be with you just shortly. New mothers can be upset about whether they should take a personal financial hit, excuse me, or have someone else take care of an ill child.
Allison's shaking her head yes. So Laura Leppi.
Yeah, I like a lot of people have talked about like alleviating that personal decision making process. I know we have something similar to this for like bereavement, and one of the teachers in my school got to access that, and it saved her lots of money and stress. I mean, like she had to take the days for the bereavement issues stuff, but it was that balance, like the difference between a sub day versus like her per diem, right? Like it was just brought up that differential between the amounts of them saved like $1,500 or whatever towards her paycheck. And I think it does alleviate that sort of stress that would be put on like new mothers or people who, you know, have illnesses and stuff. So coming back from that, I think that's my story, is about the bereavement type thing alleviates all the personal stress.
Let me know when you're ready, Jim. Jim, you're muted again.
Go for it.
All right, thanks. I'm back to Mila. Nothing? Okay. Linda?
Is this the second round? I already.
Yep, second round.
Okay, pass.
Colleen?
Forgot how to unmute. We have donation of days. that people can also ask for when they've run out of their own days.
Good.
All right, Deborah?
Pass.
Marty?
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there, I'm not familiar with the process. Like, how does one access this? Does it have to get approved by HR? Does it have to be, I guess that's my question.
Dave?
I'm going to let Mila answer that question
Okay.
as it's her team that does that.
Yeah.
Typically, it would be a request to us to because that'll take a special financial calculation by hand. So it's a request that comes typically to me.
And are they automatically approved, or is there a threshold in which they get approved for?
If they meet the terms of whatever we've written into the master agreement, they get approved.
Okay.
Okay. Marty, did you have any more story?
No, I think there's a need here. I just, like anything, there's a potential for abuse, which worries me. But I do see the need, and I also, this is a wondering, and again, this is probably not the right place, but I'm still new, so it's okay.
You're good, Marty.
You know, it just speaks to me, like I see this repeatedly with maternity leave. I just wonder if what we're really uncovering is that we need different process for maternity leave or maternity benefits.
Okay. Heather Gracious.
I'm good, thank you.
Darren.
Pass.
Nancy.
Pass.
Laura Mitchell.
Pass.
Matt. Okay. Dave Lockley.
Pass.
Heather Espinoza.
Pass.
Bo.
Pass.
Sandy.
Pass.
Teresa.
Pass.
Chris.
So I'm going to assume that the donation of days process that Colleen described is fairly time consuming and burdensome for a variety of people to implement. So if somebody who's closer to that process affirms that, that's my contribution to story.
Yes, it is. So it also is limited to care for others, but then folks have to apply, get approved, and then folks have to donate the actual days. And so there can be up to a 2 pay period delay between the request and it actually showing up on things. And so what it is most typically used for is like my baby's in the NICU, and you know, something is coming, just because it can't be applied retroactively. That's the most common uses. My child has to go through you know, chemo or blood transfusions or something of that nature. And so it is specifically not in connection with sick leave bank. Now, like I said, with the NICU example, there are many new moms who come out of maternity leave and then apply. I shouldn't say many, but there are ones who apply for care for that donation of day to go into the NICU or something like that. But it does take a while to make it done. It's not a particularly flexible process, and it's also variable depending on how many people actually have days that are eligible to be donated and donate.
Thanks, Dave.
Chris?
Very helpful.
Allison, anything to add to story?
Nothing to add to story, but I was just going to say I've had several people talk about the donation of days thing and that they are very uncomfortable with the idea of airing something very private out to the entire district when they ask for a donation of days. And so that's, you know, they're like, if I could just take days at the sub rate, I would prefer to do that over airing something very, very personal because I've seen it happen where then somebody's like, oh my gosh, I didn't, and everybody wants to ask them about it. So I know that is a challenge with that as well.
I did hear a story in that, Jim, if you can get some of that.
Tell me again, shortened version.
Yeah.
People are reluctant to share something very, very personal in asking for donation of days.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, did you get it, Jim?
I did.
Okay, Kathy Plummer.
Pass.
Dorman.
Pass.
Laura Leppy.
Allison stole mine, so pass.
Okay, so it is now 9:52. We've got 2 rounds in on the story on this. So is the pleasure to stop here, check out, and pick up story at our next meeting, or do you want to continue? What do you want to do?
I don't, I'm assuming from what Milo and I discussed at this point, we wanted to pause and pick up story and interest next time for this topic, just because we want to be respectful of both the time window we've kind of set up and other people's schedules.
Sounds good. All right. So let's do a checkout. The checkout is just a thought for today. How did you feel about the way it went? And I'm going to start again with Mila.
I think it went well. I feel like the Brady Bunch, as to use an old joke, but great. Thanks all.
All right. Marty.
Feel fine. I alternate between being frustrated with sort of how long things seem to take, but it's also beneficial to have the time to hear everybody and the think time. So I feel good. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt.
Yeah, I think we did fine in the Zoom format. So these have all worked out better than I thought they would. And so I think it's going to work out just fine for the process and feel good to move on.
All right, now my screen just bounced, so I left off with Matt. I'm going to go to Heather Grecius.
I think it went well. Thanks, everybody.
Dave Lockley.
I think it went really well, and it felt good to kind of kick the cobwebs out and start things moving again.
Chris.
Yeah, I thought it was a good, productive day. I'm glad we did story. Initially on, I was thinking there's really not much story to tell here, and let's just take this committee recommendation and bless it. And the contributions people made around story helped me learn a lot about the system and the challenges it poses now. So appreciate the process. It was good for me today. Thanks.
Laura. Lippy.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. It was great. I like seeing all your faces, and I appreciate you guys respecting my time because my next Zoom office hours start at 10. So this has been awesome. Good to chat it out. Thanks, kids.
Darren.
I think it went well. It gives us an idea of how this will look in this month and next month and how we can accomplish some goals. So appreciate it.
Heather Espinoza.
Hi, I think it went good. Sorry for the delay and me joining y'all, and I appreciate being unbanned and let back in. So good for today. Thank you.
Allison.
It's good. I think it exceeded the 0 expectations that I had, so that's good. And I appreciate that I got to pet my dog while we did this.
Linda.
I was pretty uncertain about this at the start, but feeling pretty good about it now.
Nancy.
I think it went well. And Laura, I appreciate being called a kid.
Bo.
I thought it was a good start, and it was good to see everybody. Have a great weekend.
Colleen.
Best Zoom meeting I've been to so far.
Laura Mitchell.
It was great to see
so many faces from a wide swath of the district, not just the senior leadership team, no offense, but just to see some of our teachers and our principals and see how you guys are doing. Smiling faces. So I think it went really well. I think the format works good. Maybe finding a hand signal for pass or some of those things just to save us from muting and unmuting. And I think it helps if you know what order we're going to go in, if it's alphabetical or something like, because then you can be finding your mute and unmute because you know you're hot. So
thanks, Laura, for the suggestions. Appreciate it. Sandy.
Yeah, Marty, you said, you're a little frustrated sometimes by how slow it goes. Well, we say that in person every single year. So this may truly test our patience this time like no other year has. Allison, I'm with you right there on the dog thing. Mine, I'm sure, will make future appearances. I appreciate that. I'm just really glad to see people's faces too, just like everyone else. I'm out of state helping my mom, and I just feel now, it's been about over a month now, and I feel really far away sometimes, but it's good to feel mentally back in the mix, seeing all of you. So stay well, everyone.
Kathy.
Did you say me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
That's okay. I thought it went really well. I do love seeing the faces and hearing everything. I'm wondering how we can. I definitely don't want to just look at the notes, but this was a simple story. As we get into the more complex story, I'm not sure how to remember without being able to look up at the board. So I don't know if there's a way to, be able to have some kind of, I think there's a whiteboard function, but I don't know how that works. So just trying to think in advance as we get more complex, how we're gonna look at everybody's great thoughts so we don't have repeats as we go. But again, it was really, really good to connect with everybody. I'm so, I just love this team and our process. And so thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Kathy, there is a way we can share, either Jim or I can share the screen, whoever's not running the actual names and so on and so forth can share the screen, and then you can see it as we're walking through as well, especially when we're doing a Word document. So we'll work on that for next time, okay?
Cool.
Deborah.
Yeah, I thought it went pretty well. We were able to work through and be patient with some of the glitches that popped up. I have to say I'm getting really tired of seeing how badly I need a haircut. I think it's time to start putting everything into a ponytail and being done with it. But I appreciate all the thinking, and I think we'll just get more effective with this as we go. It feels good to be back at the table. So thanks, everybody.
Matt and Teresa, oh, sorry. Matt and Teresa, did I get you already? Have you checked out already? Teresa?
No.
Okay. Teresa, please.
I think it went well. I'm always very intrigued and, still learning, but it's always great to hear perspective across the board, outside of North Glen Middle School and what we do. So I do appreciate all the different perspectives and everybody's input. So I thank everybody and have a great weekend.
Norman, did I get you?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought it went really well. I really appreciate getting back into the work, and I really, really appreciate having a reason to shower. So that was really nice as well.
Jim.
Thank you for your work. A couple of things. One comment we had was see the document as we work on it. The other one was try and fix the order that we're going to go through as we call on people. People, I'm very proud of you and the things you're doing today. I hope in the next 36 to 48 hours, you have a chance to address the multitude of challenges that will come into your family life that you didn't ever anticipate. We'll make it through this together and we will succeed. Thank you for your work and the things you're doing for the children of your district.
And I'll just echo what Jim said. You guys amaze me. This is such a good team and you're very patient and I appreciate that. Jim and I are learning as we go along too. So we'll try to be better next time we meet. And with that, I think I got everybody. Did I miss anybody? If I did, holler quickly because we're about to wrap it up. All right. Thank you, you all. And you have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Bye,
See you a week from today.
Week from today. Yep.